try it a couple ways, right?
Yeah, we'll actually just like rehearse it multiple times and see what we like.
We can even, like right now, we can record like few openings and then you'll just make a cut.
And the rest of us are going to get better at editing so that you don't have so much work all the time.
Well, I don't know. And like, I do think that editing gets a lot easier again as you like learn how to do it. But yeah, so all that to say, hello, we are Beyond Ray. This is our pilot episode of our podcast. We're some gals here in Seattle doing industrial design and decided that we wanted to talk more with each other about it, shine some light on stories that maybe haven't been heard, talk to our community, connect with you guys, right? And we hope that you enjoy this and maybe want to talk to us some more. But since it's our first ever episode, we can talk a little bit more about ourselves.
Yeah, I don't know how much we need like each of us to say who we are in terms of our current job, because like it's going to become obvious over time, right? Like I do think that early on, it's helpful to be like, to each of us say our names in our voices so that people have a clue, like kind of who they're getting used to hearing. Like have a sound, like a voice sound with a name. But I don't know if it matters a ton about our jobs. Is that silly?
And I feel like that's something that we could kind of like drop in as we talk about things like, oh, for example, my experience working at a tech company in Seattle, like I did this or whatever. But I feel like for a pilot, it might be more, I wonder if it would be more like exciting to hear about more topics as opposed to like, hi, this is who I am talking about this topic. Just a thought.
Maybe. I do think that there's a little bit of like, who the fuck is talking about this? And that people get a little like, who dares speak about? And actually designers do get kind of like that. We get a little gatekeepy about like who's doing design.
It's almost like show me your portfolio because before I decide to listen to you. It is like this. I think like giving a hint of what you work on gives you a little bit credibility, but I would be like, man, just sports goods or like that many years in the industry. Imposter syndrome. Can you even admit you're an industrial designer?
Okay. Also, what if like we weren't just food for thought? What if we weren't women and we were just a bunch of like old sounding men and we were like, yeah, we're industrial designers? Like, would we still feel the need to explain so much what we do?
Oh, interesting.
Exactly. Hey, Ginger, can you do like the voice modifier filter? It's actually for guys. And then it will be revealed it was, like the Bronte sisters books.
This is like a form of presenting yourself to people. We think someone's probably going to listen to this. Right? Not just mom and dad. We promise. And it is I don't know, I guess, do we know anyone else that does a podcast? And we've got to ask them if they're a dude. Like, did you like think deeply about presenting yourself? Like, did you care a lot? Were you worried that people would be like, who the fuck are you?
They didn't. I can tell you, they weren't.
We're saying something to the effect of like, between us, we have over 20 years in the industry, not to mention years in school before that, or lots of years being a woman on this planet dealing with.
How about like, hey, so welcome to the Beyond Ray. We are 4 girls working in industrial design on different levels of seniority and different industries. None of us is above 10 years of experience, but we believe that we still have enough experience to have discussion around industrial design, and especially with like so little women going into the profession after years in the design school. Over 50% of females in the design schools, but when you look on who actually works in the industry, it's hardly any. And a lot of people switch to different disciplines like research, UX, which are very valid and interesting parts of design, but it's not this hardcore industrial design that we sign up to school to go for. And we will also bring some other people to the podcast to talk about CMS, research, how it all plays and how important it is for the industrial design job. But between the four of us, we're all industrial designers. We signed up for it, we went through the school, and we continued the path. And we were having discussions because these years in the industry gave us enough observations.
That's it. We could use that.
Woo.
First
Nice
hurdle.
job.
Done. Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah, you can't start with my accent.
No,
Yes, we
never.
can.
No, that's great. And
Yeah,
like,
I sent the snippet that you Ginger made to my friend. I was like, oh my god, like this is horrible accent, and she's like no, I'm like used to listening to it like all the time. I was like, oh, you have to listen to it every day.
Margaret, honestly, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I love your accent.
I love listening to you talk.
yes. I like listening to all you guys talk, or else I would have quit this board.
Well, at least Margaret and I.
Yeah, also we're making a podcast, so you better.
So do we think we want to do quick, like, hi, I'm so-and-so, just get the voice clip of like who we are?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Hi. Hello. Hey. Hi, I'm Jazz. I am the youngest of the group, so it's been really cool to hear about a lot of different perspectives and have this board of rad women to get bigger perspective on, as I'm, a young female designer entering the industry. Right now I'm working at a tech startup based in Seattle, which is cool. And yeah, I love to travel, I love to dance, and I love to make things.
I go next. Hey, so I'm a woman of many names. Let's use for this podcast Megan. There is no single name you can find me under. I'm an industrial designer with quite a few years of experience. I'm originally from Eastern Europe, which you can probably tell. I studied there in 2 countries and also interned there. I moved to the US. Right now I'm in tech. I always picked up stuff from my boyfriend, so that's how I became a really successful industrial designer, because of one of my exes. And as a hobby, I'm very much into rock climbing, which I can thank for the other ex-boyfriend. What else do I do? I'm very much into children's books illustration, which I picked up as my COVID hobby. And also living in Seattle, loving it. I tried moving to Silicon Valley, which was horrible. That's not my environment. I'm like a hardcore Pacific Northwestern for quite a few years right now.
Hey, I'm Kate. I am the chair of this chapter, and I'm really excited to be working with these other women. I am a New Yorker originally, but have now been out here for 10 years and have been in the industry for half of that. I like doing pottery and sewing and making things a lot in my spare time. And then, yeah, just doing anything outdoorsy and being Pacific Northwesty in the other time.
So I'm Ginger. I work at an industrial test equipment company outside of the Seattle area. I think I've probably been here in the Pacific Northwest the longest, actually. Got that OG status. I'm planted here like an evergreen tree. You can't make me leave. In my spare time, I like to do photography and drink all forms of caffeine that I can get my hands on. And I'm super excited to do this podcast, co-chairing with Kate on this Women in Design board. And we are Beyond Ray.
Woo!
Feels real, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that said, maybe we can just dive right in. I'll just go ahead and start hitting you guys with questions. We wanted to talk about like why we're doing a podcast. Because obviously we're running some Women in Design stuff. We're trying to work on this community and, try to find women to speak and present. So what do we think a podcast is going to do for us? It's sort of different.
Especially with so many podcasts already out there, there is still something we have to say, because industrial design is such a niche. No one talks about it. And I'm tired of seeing the design podcasts, which end up being all about like service, UX, and all the other things which are like super interesting. But man, I would like to just talk more about industrial design and just hear more about industrial design.
When we started this, like our main goal in starting a women in design chapter at all was just really, really wanting women to know that they have connections with lots of other industrial designers in the area, because I think many of us are doing it kind of alone in our company. Maybe there's one other industrial designer. They're probably not a woman because we don't have a lot of representation. And so we really, really wanted, minority designers to be in community with each other, at least virtually and, hopefully in person. When we started putting together events, we came into conflict with, I think, a representation of imposter syndrome that's going up all the way to like the highest level of leadership in women doing industrial design, which is, people were sort of hesitant to be in the spotlight and be the main focus for an event. Or even if they were sort of open to it, they hadn't been asked previously because maybe they had been passed over for people that are men. And so we were having some trouble getting traction with event speakers, but I think that a lot of other women identified with their desire to like share knowledge and share community. And they were interested in sitting down and talking with us and letting us interview them to get that knowledge out in the world. So yeah, we've made a bit of a pivot, and this is going to be a priority, just to make sure that we can still share all this really valuable industry knowledge that people have and help people feel connected to each other.
Yeah, and I think that, like, the people that we talked to who were not super comfortable with, say, like, doing a presentation or something that felt like a big deal, but were open to a podcast or something like this, I felt the same way, which might be kind of weird to say because I was also the one that was, like, pushing, do a podcast, let's do this thing, let's, like, start this, I don't know, maybe it's a big deal, maybe it's not, but it feels a lot less of a, I don't know, big ask. Because if someone came and asked me to, like, make a presentation, I don't know, stand in an auditorium.
Yeah.
I don't really want to do that if I don't have to.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely, it seems like a comfortable, welcoming environment as well. Talk to people and talk to each other.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a credit to us.
Yeah.
Hopefully our guests will feel the same way.
Yeah, I was cut with a joke. Like I saw it once as illustration. Someone wondering, am I good enough to even have an imposter syndrome? And I think it's often what's in our minds, and like we can't get anywhere if we keep asking ourselves if we are enough to even have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
We kind of started talking about that actually a little bit of like what makes a podcast different, and that like it's comfortable, right? We were like just talking to each other, like it's a conversation. This aspect of like speaking freely, I say as we're like looking at some notes and stuff, but it's pretty conversational, and we're spending a lot more time on it. Like we don't feel constrained with, we have this hour on Zoom to talk to 50 people who bought tickets or whatever. We're just having a conversation. And I think I brought this up before, like you don't have to get all dressed up or whatever. I'm in sweats.
Can't help it. Just
Thank God for
always looks so good.
sweats. Right? This is like work from home attire. It's pretty great. Also just like being at home. I'm kind of a homebody, so I don't want to go into the office if I don't have to. I don't want to go anywhere to do anything, not to totally out myself of like someone who blows off plans like I did on Friday. But that's, I don't know. Those are the big draws to me. Let me know if I'm crazy.
I think I like podcasts in general because the depth is so much more. Like when there's an audience and you've kind of formatted everything for the audience, it can be wonderful, but it's very regimented. And podcasts are so beautiful because like you can follow a thread way off into the weeds, and I think get into some conversations that just like I don't hear in a lot of other mediums. That seems to
Yeah, I just feel so many regrets when we have a good conversation. Sorry, I cut again. We have so many good conversations, and then they just disappear. It was like 50 people or so who could participate, but then there is no way to really share it. The whole recording of like a live presentation, it doesn't give you exactly the same vibe. Like you have to be there, or like you kind of lose it. And also, like, I don't expect people to follow like YouTube recordings of presentations. This is kind of 90s. I think it's like so much better to just bring people for like honest conversations, get it on Spotify, and give the opportunity to listen to it when you walk your dog or when you clean up your kitchen.
Yeah, like it's not the formalness of attending a talk and like sitting in a theater. Um, you're like a fly on the wall if you listen to the podcast while you walk your dog or you're in the car or whatever.
Mm-hmm. It also kind of reminds me of like the show The Voice, because there's no physical image of a person that you're looking at or judging based on anything else besides the content of what you're saying, unless you have an atrocious voice. But
That's true.
I actually love that concept though, because that is so similar to, even though it's voice and so you like can kind of tell stuff about the person, but like blind auditions in music has done probably more for women getting into like orchestral positions than almost like anything else.
Actually, I have story about it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, like so I have a really good friend who's a violin in San Francisco Opera, and she was like too young and didn't have enough in her resume to even apply for the position. But apparently in like music industry, you can like write a letter and require to be included in the audition. And when it happened, there was like a crowd of people just like playing in different stages of the interview. And she was selected as one of the two people who actually got a position in SF Opera just based on her play. And she was rejected based on her resume, but she made a cut, and it was like a blind jury. Like no one knew who she is. They just heard the violin playing, and she got the job. She's like one of the youngest performing in San Francisco Opera. I'm like so proud of her, and it's actually super inspiring. It's also like looking at the portfolio, not knowing who made the drawings.
Yeah, like I actually have been wondering how design hiring can be more like that. And when I like look through portfolios and I have to do a very modest amount of sort of hiring consideration at my company, and I think about that a lot, and how it's really easy for people to look at these things that don't matter. I'm just like, look at the work, guys, look at the work. And I think that some of it can be like if we're the ones that it's like the hiring manager or whatever, and we can sort of filter things, or maybe we need to ask HR to do it. But that stuff, we got to catch up to even the music industry, which is like super old and uber sausage fest, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, because every stage, right? Like, I think we know the percentage for women working as professional industrial designers, but I don't know the stats for like women landing their first internship and their second, and sort of like on and on. And I think that like we know the stats for women in industrial design as a profession, but we don't know the stats for, women getting their first internship and their second. And I think that it's quite significant, like how much that spread is probably impacted by like every single one of those decisions that people start to make early on, and that those decisions are definitely impacted by gender, just like they are by race and lots of other details that, people have biases about.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's also something that we want to like shed more light on and try to talk to more people about, because there's a lot of I feel like there is a lot of design hiring that is really opaque. Like, how is that happening? And maybe it really is because it's such a small industry and it's people just like calling each other up and making handshakes at parties,
The nepotism
which is cool if you're like one of the in people or whatever, but it sucks if you're not, right?
To a certain degree, I would disagree, because I think like portfolio and great work still speaks for itself. I'd rather say that like a lot of women are just afraid of putting their work out there. There's always hesitation, like, am I good enough to like Instagram with just my projects and all of that? Some women do, but some are like still hesitant. And there is also like this prejudice that whatever you put on the internet, it always stays there. And I think like a lot of us always think that like I'm not so good now, maybe I will be better in the future, maybe this is when I would start putting things on the internet. Also, if you remember our talk with the Monica Walker from the Big Agnes, she actually spoke about it, that she was hesitant to establish her like Instagram with her projects and her work. But then she thought that that's the only way to come forward, because like outdoors industry is so male designer centric, and the only way she saw is to just take what I do, put it out there. It's actually good. I need to establish myself. But like a lot of girls just wouldn't do that. Like I'm not publishing any of my design work. I publish my other stuff, like illustrations. But yeah, it's part of the problem or part of the industry environment we're operating in. It's not problem with industry. It's problem with women who always are questioning themselves.
Yeah, it's beyond just design.
Sure.
And it's been like this for ages. It's beyond. Yeah, it's beyond. It's beyond Ray.
To that point, something I've noticed, especially being younger and being a woman, it's like there's a lot of pressure. So you already have the pressure of being a new designer, but then you're also like, well, I don't feel that I fit into the primary demographic, you know, those moments when you walk into like a conference center and it's all old white men and you're like, do I, as a young female Chinese American woman, belong here? It's like those things add that pressure. So it is like why we want to create a space where that pressure doesn't need to exist, because we're all on the same page about that.
I think this pressure will always exist. Maybe the way we can make a difference is just talk about it, so more people just become comfortable with it. And it's like, yeah, everyone has the same pressure. You just have to go there and do your best job, because there is no other way forward.
I mean, I think there's a distinction. Like, yes, I think that everybody has professional nervousness and pressure. And so one of the things you're saying about like us overcoming it and putting ourselves out there is true. And I do think that women tend to like hold back and wait and kind of like perfect too much. But I think that part of it is also the pressure that Jasmine's talking about, where it's like, you know that you're not going to be taken seriously as likely. Like I feel this all the time on my team at work, because they're mostly engineers, right? But every time I make a point, I'm like, this has to mean something, or else I better just not talk, because I feel like every time is like a scorekeeping moment where it's like, is it worth listening to her? And I don't think that that's happening for everybody else.
Right. Like you're worried that your coworkers are like going to judge women as like a monolith because you talked about something, which is super not fair, because each of them gets to be like an individual person, individual baseball nut, individual engineer, whatever. But then when you talk, you're like all designers suddenly, or you're all women or whatever. And that's not true. But like, maybe if we can talk about this more, we can show that like lots of people have that same experience and that it's wildly bullshit, and we can just make it go away.
True. Also, the amount of fucking conversation about golf and drinking I have to listen to, I'm like, I should be able to say whatever I want. Sorry for people that like golf.
Sorry, I miscategorized them. They also like golf.
How many MBAs do you work with?
Oh no, they're all engineers. I mean,
I work with too many MBAs.
Yeah, that's the
So
problem.
many.
I want to say that I feel like I'm privileged because I work in a company that the second someone undermines my opinion because of my gender, HR gets involved. But it wasn't always the case. I used to work in a company where I've been in a meeting once when I counted like 25 men and it was just me. And I was actually wondering, what do they all think about me and how do they feel when I speak? And it was like borderline uncomfortable.
yeah. And yeah, I mean, we're obviously not going to talk about all this today, but also just the extra like energy on like evaluating what they say too, like having to deal with all of like the random inappropriate comments about gender and assumptions that they're just making around you a lot of the time. I think in a workplace that doesn't really handle gender properly, it's just like, okay, how many things am I going to like hear and kind of just like let slide today, and which ones am I going to react to, and like, do I feel like I've lost some sort of integrity at the end of the day when I haven't responded to like enough of them to feel good, you know? And that's just like a job that's not supposed to be happening in like our normal just like conversation and like energy expenditure at work, obviously.
Yeah, it's like the cringy stereotype that there will be people at your workplace that might actually like call you honey or something, but it sounds so ridiculous, but it's real. I don't know if that happens to you guys. I hope not, but it sucks. Yes, it happens.
Yeah. It's weird too, because I guess in contrast to what you're saying, Kate, I would consider my workplace to be more, I think, open. It is a startup, so it's smaller, and our CEO is a Chinese American woman, and so I think there's a lot of badass women on our team that I do look up to. But that being said, still, I think there's this, even outside of like that work bubble, there's the overlying societal pressure of being in the business workplace as a woman, and you think about these weird things like, do I look okay? Like, am I going to be taken seriously with what I'm wearing? Should I be less cute? Should I be more cute? And it's like, why do we have to think about those things when men, I feel like, don't have to code switch most of the time to be in their male dominant masculine workplace? Like, you know how some products are kind of like have that type of, this is such a tangent, but they have that like social, you know, like nice watches.
Yeah, this is
like
exactly like when I browse through dating apps and there are guys with AirPods and guys with something else. I'm like, why would he pick different brands, or why is the picture running with AirPods like actually having a cable? Like, which year is it from? Or like sometimes, okay, so dating apps and guys have like selfies in the bathroom, and like each selfie is a different phone. So I'm like, oh, I can say that this is like older picture than this one.
Doing some sleuthing.
Like iPhone 10 to iPhone 13, and I can immediately tell, like, oh yeah, okay, you used to have hair, but it's not longer the case.
Like a designer skill. I know what product that is. I know what era it's from. I know when you took this picture. You can't hide anything from me.
Actually, yeah, exactly.
I love it being like not just Apple products, but just like anything. Like they have literally just any object, and you're like, I know when that was made.
Anything.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's the superpower. We can judge so much.
I mean, I really like Beats, I have to say. They're good headphones.
I've never had Beats. I went for Bang & Olufsen and it was on sale because it was this speckled CMF. And I know it's like, the just regular black ones were much more expensive. But I thought like, well, someone put so much work into CMF and make like this speckled resin. Like, I just want to appreciate the work that went to it. I know how much push and pull it was to actually make the version, which is like speckled. And like, I just want to have it, even though the neutral black ones are more like,
That's cool.
I don't know, like fitting everything else I have. But I just saw really unique CMF. I was like, yeah, I know how much work it costs. I will appreciate it.
Hopefully this podcast makes it to that CMF designer somewhere. And they'll be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I feel that.
I bet they're a woman.
And then we can get her on the show.
For sure. Which is also interesting. Like CMF is like a women dominant field. And also why? Because you always push women there because you think they cannot do industrial design.
But also, like, why would guys not want to do it? Do they think it's like, I don't know. I feel like there are things that guys don't want to do because they perceive it to be girly, but it doesn't have to be. Or also, that's not a bad thing.
But when a guy does CMF, he is the hero.
That kind of reminds me of like, I was reading articles about Charles and Ray Eames. And there's something about how she was like the one who really drove a lot of the CMF, whereas Charles was more of, at least perceived as being like more of the architect and like the technical designer. And it's weird that those are the narratives that are pushed when, I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but it's like now there's more light being shed on what Ray did. And it wasn't just things like the color of the chair,
Yet another way that history did this to us. Is it fair to say that we kind of talked about the, like, what are we trying to do with the podcast thing? We're kind of starting to talk about the next question, actually, which is explaining how we came to our name, Beyond Ray.
That's the interesting one. It's actually pretty fun. Kate, would you like to start?
Okay. But Jasmine, you're going to, unless you want to, I mean, I know you can still do it justice.
I could talk more about the brand. Maybe you guys can start with the name. No, you can do it because you kind of like you have more of the story behind it, and then I'll tell the story behind visually how it's represented.
Okay. So thinking about the name for the podcast, we definitely wanted to get at the stories of people that we don't think have been represented sufficiently in the storytelling and just sort of known experience in our industry. Ray Eames is sort of this token woman industrial designer that people think about anytime you just need to like prove that there was a woman that did industrial design. People are like, oh no, like, yeah, what about Ray? Like, and anytime there's any sort of women's history about industrial design, she's just like the face of it. There are a couple, but not many that really get talked about. And she is like far and away at the top of the list, which is kind of tricky because she's also part of a couple. And I think that she gets a lot of that attention because it's easy for people to talk about her actually as an afterthought to her partner, but then to pretend that they were talking about her first, and they weren't usually. Beyond Ray felt like a fitting name for us because we're going to hear stories from a lot of people that don't talk and don't get the recognition that they deserve for really substantial careers and impact and, innovation. So, yeah, I think that we're all really grateful to be taking it a little deeper.
Yeah, and it's been like decades, right?
No, I think it's super interesting that when we think about like would Ray Eames even exist without the Charles Eames, and it's like part of the problem that the best industrial designer we have in our minds as a female is there because she's associated with her husband.
Yeah.
Which often is the case.
Yeah.
And I can talk through personal experience. Like having a partner in industrial design often just makes you more confident, or like gives you credit for the work you did together. So yeah, that the title is fitting, like Beyond Ray, and like beyond the relationship with the Charles Eames is actually the clue of the podcast.
Yeah.
I think that also the flip side doesn't get asked as much, right? Where people wonder if Ray wasn't married to Charles, like, would she have had a career? Would we know who she is? But I don't think that people ask the same question about Charles, where they think, oh my gosh, if he hadn't met Ray, would he have become famous?
Wow.
People don't think that.
Like,
Yeah.
but seriously,
I'm pretty sure he wouldn't.
Yeah.
No, I think there is like I think there is so much of like the management and like how to make it a big deal in our minds. Yeah, it wouldn't be the same. No one gives credit.
There's this quote that says, almost always when there's a successful man, there's a very interesting and able woman behind him. And ironically enough, that's actually from the first, or one of the first interviews that Ray and Charles Eames did on NBC. And that was something that the host said during that interview. And it's funny because that's super prevalent in almost all male dominant industries where there are partnerships, is like that even the male name always comes first. And it's like, okay.
yeah. So to be clear, we don't have any beef with Ray. She's an amazing designer, and we are grateful
Oh, yeah,
for her having come before us. You know, I think it's important to say that we're happy she gets credit. It's just that it's not the end of the road, and we have a lot more to talk about.
For sure.
It's just sad that it was the Ray only. There was so many others that we didn't manage to learn about because we're like 50 years after. And I'm sure there was more, but just the work went forgotten, or like someone else took credit. It's just frustrating to the point.
Yeah. It's interesting to line up the timelines as well, because they were emerging in like a very mid-century era of industrial design where it was a lot more masculine. And so it makes sense as to why now Ray gets a lot more recognition, since we are more, I guess, open to gender equality and things like that in the workplace. And so it's like expanding that spotlight beyond Ray. Beyond Ray.
The naming was very natural, obviously. Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I feel like actually, Jasmine, you probably did more research than all of us about this because you worked on the branding, but it's kind of nice. Like I didn't know that quote came from one of their interviews. That's wild.
Yeah, it really is.
I have actually another quote that came to my mind. It's like an anecdote that at some point Bill and Hillary Clinton were driving through their hometown, and like the guy on the gas station was someone that Hillary used to date, and Bill said like, "You're probably like grateful. You're probably like just happy you married the like United States president." And she was supposed to say, "If I married that guy, he would be the next US president."
Fuck yeah.
Which is like, yeah, it's like women often make their partners successful, but is it right? Like, should we be just proud of ourselves that we can make someone else successful? No, we want to be successful ourselves. And the Trump-Clinton election showed that, like, no, it's not our turn yet.
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting, like, there's a lot of assumption that women take a supporting role instead of just being their own successful person or standing by themselves. And like, I do feel like there are people who would rather it be kept that way, that, oh, you're like a great woman if you support someone really, really well to the point that they're so successful and that you can take some credit for that. But if that person becomes their own successful person, there are these people that would frown upon that, like it's selfish, when that's ridiculous, because people don't, treat men like that.
Like, you know how it is. It's wrong to be successful. It's wrong to be a loser. If you're like a homestay mom, you just lost it. If you're a career woman, then you don't care for the important stuff. We just have to deal with it, and we have to find our way forward until the next generation will make it right. And it's already better than it used to be. Like, we're already privileged, but there is so much work to be done.
We should spend some time talking about some of the visual branding, just because a lot of work's been put into it, and I know Jasmine has to hop off soon.
The visual imagery, I really liked, well, we really liked collectively, like that circle of empty chairs, because it kind of shows that there's a lot of space to be created and filled in this area of conversation regarding spotlighting female and other underrepresented industrial designers past Ray Eames. And so it's like Kate said something about, it's like filling those seats to invite people to come chat with us and share their stories. And I think that's just really fun and very open and approachable too. It's not like so serious or anything. It's just, we're talking about what we've been through and kind of showing each other that it's not an individual experience.
Yeah, I want to say that I really like it. And like, when I saw the images, it didn't even occur to my head that this can be the story, like empty chairs to be filled with like interesting people who have stories to share. Which only makes me think I'm much better at checking parting lines than doing the storytelling behind it, the visual design.
Hey, we gotta have all types. Those parting lines gotta get checked.
Yeah, they're gonna be checked. They always just get
Oh my god, I feel that so hard. Like,
Ew.
Let's talk about tolerance.
Way to get everybody offline really fast, Margaret. That's like our
like the most
safe word.
Boring thing that I can get so angry about.
No, I think it's interesting, like setting the specs. I enjoy it, which makes me feel.
No, you just found the right job.
Boring.
That's right. I was gonna say.
That's the in-house design, in contrary to consulting.
Ginger, I think if you want to start wrapping us towards the affirmation and stuff, that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad we were able to talk about this stuff so much. I mean, I think we went a little long, and that's great that we have a lot to say. Yes, I guess I will cut, but there's a whole 5 minutes in the middle that I can't use about temperatures at offices.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, next topic. How many of you did have the case of sexual harassment at the workplace?
Let's have that be a whole episode or something.
I feel like that's a huge topic, and it's gonna make people sad, and it's
we need a trigger warning for that.
I know.
Yep. One day we'll talk about it.
I thought we should have episodes with like the digitally modified voices talking about that.
We could. I could modify the voices. We'll see what we need to do.
Okay. Yeah.
I have the case to bring on.
We can also like bleep things out. I don't know. It'd be interesting. Like the really deep cuts. All that to say, yeah, we're going to talk about really important, really real stuff here. And again, like the real reason we're doing this is to connect with people that we think are probably feeling kind of isolated in the industry, the way that we felt when we came together to start this project, to work on women in design in this community. There's lots of people in this industry or studying it, working in it, researching, that have moments where they feel like they don't belong, or they feel like they don't belong right now. And design needs to be a place that anyone can step into so that we can make the products in the world that we all deserve. If we exclude anyone, then it's a great loss. And so anyone out there that, you know, if that felt like you, please stay in the industry. Please keep studying. Please keep researching, whatever it is. Your future work could make all the difference to someone out there. And hopefully listening to this podcast will help you out. If you need more than that, reach out to us.
We want to know everybody. We want to know you.
Yes. But yeah, thank you for listening. This is a free podcast and we want to keep it that way. Just like putting our thoughts out there in the world, connecting with people, talking, sharing stories, sharing some laughs, right? We're going on a once a month schedule or so. Just getting some logistics out of the way there. And if you've got some feedback for us, like reach out to us on social media, leave comments, whatever. Tell us who you want us to bring onto the podcast. We've got some exciting folks lined up to talk here. But if there's someone that we need to know about or that wants to connect with us, definitely drop us a note. All right. Is that everything, guys?
Yes. And find us on Instagram at @WID_Seattle.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And we want to say, like, we want to keep it moving. And we hope we will. Like, we know how many podcasts just like show up and disappear. But we want to make like a little bit of difference. This is such a niche, and we all try to make our path forward. Like with your support, like we hope we would keep going, because there is a value talking about all the stuff we just have mentioned.
Yeah. Talk to us. Don't be scared. We don't bite. We just say nipples.
Nipples.
Yeah, and we're not angry. We're just annoyed with the situation.
Oh my God.